Continuing then with our deep dive of Swift, we've now looked at various different types of variable, as well as arrays to store multiple variables and dictionaries to match keys with variable values. So now we're going to move on from variable types and look at if statements. And they are an absolutely fundamental part of programming in any language. And in Swift, they work extremely simply. So let's say, for example, you've got an app that for whatever reason, you need to be over 18 years old to play. Then we might have a user with an age of 13, and we want to check whether that user is over 18 or not. Obviously, when the app is running, we wouldn't know in advance what the age of the user is going to be. So we need to test this out, and we can do it by using if, and then the variable name. And then if we want to check that they're over 18, then we look for age being greater than 18. And then we use these curly brackets to contain the code for whatever we want to do if this statement is true. So for now, we might just print, you can play. If the user's not over 18, we can use an else statement to do something if this statement is not true. So we might print, you're too young. So there we go. So at the moment it's printing you're too young. If we change the age to 21 though, then we get the result, you can play. So this is if the age is strictly greater than 18. But what we normally mean when we say over 18 is actually 18 or over. So at the moment, if you put in your age as 18, it will come up as too young because we're checking for when the age is actually bigger than 18, and 18 is not bigger than 18. So if we wanted to change that, we would make it so that age was greater than or equal to 18, and then 18-year-olds would be allowed to play. So that's now a greater than or equal to if statement. So that's the basic idea. That's how if statements work. What if we wanted to check someone's username? So we might have, for example, a variable called name, which we might set equal to Kirsten. Then we might want to only let people called Rob play our game. Then we can check to see if name is equal to, and now the fiddly bit with equal tos is that we need to use two equal signs. And this is because if we use one, then what that actually does is set the variable name equal to Rob, and it actually returns a true statement. So we'll get an error here because we're trying to change the value of name to Rob. So setting a variable to a value is different to checking whether the variable is actually equal to that value. And to make it clear which one we want to do, if we want to check, then we use two equals like that. Incidentally, if we want to check that a name is not equal to Rob, we use exclamation mark and equals. And that's a fairly standard usage across a number of different languages as well. So here we might want to say, hi, the name, you can play. And if that's not true, we could print, sorry, name, you can't play. So at the moment, Kirsten sadly cannot play, but I can. All right. We can even combine more than one if statement together. So we can look at two if statements and we can join them together with an and. So let's, for example, my game is even more selective than it's been so far. So you have to be Rob and over 18. Then we would check for if name is equal to Rob and we use a double ampersand or a double and symbol, Shift 7 on my keyboard, to represent an and. So if name is equal to Rob and age is greater than or equal to 18, then we'll print you can play. And this time I'm also going to show you that we can add an if statement to the else field. So we can look at else if. So if just one of those is true, name is equal to Rob, for example, then we might print, sorry Rob, you need to get older. So if we now change the age, say back down to 13, then both of these are not true, so we won't get the you can play, but the name is still Rob, so we should get a nice friendly message for Rob. There we go. So you can have as many of these if-else statements as you like. Keep on going as needed. We can also double up our if statements with an or between them. So say I wanted to get a bit selective and allow either Rob or Kirsten to play my game. Then I could set if name is equal to Rob or, and the symbol for or is a bit of an odd one, it's a double pipe. And the pipe key is shift and backslash for me, just above the left shift key. So you need two of those to represent an or. And then we'll check for name being Kirsten. And then if either of those are true, we might say something like, welcome, and then the name. And of course, you can combine as many if statements as you like. It starts to get a bit complicated, but you could put ors and then ands, and you can have as many statements as you like all along that line if you really want to. All right, just one more thing to show you, and that is how we can use booleans with if statements. And they actually work really nicely. If, for example, we have a boolean called is male, and we set that to be true, then we can use that directly in an if statement. So we can use if is male and then have the result, which might be something like you're male coming out there, and we don't need to have is male equal to true. That will still work, but we don't need it. When you've got a boolean, you can just put that boolean directly into the if statement there. Okay, so that's all we need to know about if statements for now. Of course, I'm going to give you a challenge to put all of this together, and the challenge is going to be to create a login system. So I want you to create a username and password variables with values. You can choose whichever values you like. And then I want you to use if statements to check those against the supposedly correct username and password and give the user feedback to tell them if they are correct. So that's one option, or possibly they're both wrong, the username and the password. 3, just the username is wrong. Or 4, just the password is wrong. So I want you to work out either are the values correct, are they both wrong, is just one of them wrong, and then which one it is. Okay, simple as that. Best of luck. Go for it. All right, hope you got there. I'm going to create a variable called username, which will be equal to Rob Percival, and that will be the correct value. And then a password I'll set equal to my pass. And then first off, I'll check for them both being correct. So if username is equal to Rob Percival and password is equal to my pass, then we'll print you're in. You've logged into the system. So else, let's check for both being wrong. To see if a value is different to another value, we use exclamation mark and equals. And that's a fairly standard approach from all programming languages. Well done if you were able to give that a quick Google and figure it out for yourself, or if you knew it from any other language. So if the username is not equal to Rob Percival and the password is not equal to my pass, then we'll print both username and password are wrong. And then now I'm going to be a little bit lazy, and rather than checking for both username and password, I'm just going to check for the username being correct. So if the username is equal to Rob Percival, well, that means that the username is correct, but we know that they're not both correct because otherwise we would be here. And we're not, so it must be that only the username is correct. So we'll write password is wrong. And then for the last one, I'm going to be even lazier. And I'm not even going to check because there's only one more option. So the final option, if we get to here, it must be the other option, which is that the username is wrong. Okay, so I hope you got something like that. Don't worry if you did a double check every time, that's not a problem, but do always try and find the most efficient ways to code and solve a problem. So the moment you can see we've got you're in, let's see what happens if I get the username wrong. Then we get username is wrong, excellent. If I get the password wrong as well, then we get both username and password are wrong. And if I now get the username right, but the password wrong, we get the correct message there as well. Wonderful. So well done for sticking with me. We've done some heavy coding over the last few videos. Now you'll be relieved to hear we're going to move away from Playgrounds and back to core Xcode, and we're going to make a new app, a game in fact, and it's going to be a simple guessing game called How Many Fingers.